Hi folks, HR Funk here. With a video that comes about as a result of viewer requests, recently I had a couple of viewers ask me about producing a video on the defensive use of single action revolvers. And I thought this was very interesting, and it presented a unique chance for a mental exercise to think about the dynamics involved in defensive shooting and apply them to a single action revolver. Now, I have to say at the outset, I have no background in cowboy action shooting or anything like that, but I have extensive training in the defensive use of firearms to include handguns. So I'm going to approach this from the perspective of modern gunfighting techniques and applying them to single action revolvers. I'm not going to try to take something from the 19th century and somehow modernize that. Now, some of you might be asking right now, why on earth would anyone choose to defend themselves with a single action revolver? And I can think of two reasons. One, this might be the only handgun they have, and they might not have the means or desire to purchase a new handgun. Or two, this might be the handgun they have with them when an imminent threat presents itself and they have no choice other than to defend themselves with the single action revolver. That could be a situation where maybe someone is hunting or hiking and they are carrying a single action revolver, which might be perfectly fine for anything they're expecting to do on that trip. But all of a sudden an unexpected threat presents itself and they have no choice other than to use the single action revolver to defend themselves. So again, I'm going to be looking at this from modern gunfighting techniques and a modern gunfighting perspective, and we're going to see just how we can employ the single action revolver in a defensive scenario. Now, before I get too far into this, I want to emphasize that if you believe you are in imminent danger or that potentially you're going to face an imminent threat and you can avoid that situation or escape from that situation, you're always better off to take that type of an action than to resort to a firearm to defend yourself. Use of a firearm should always be the last resort, never the first resort, and as I said, if you can escape from that situation or avoid it altogether, that's always going to be your best course of action. The first thing I want to say is if you have to defend yourself with a single action revolver, like my Ruger Bisley Blackhawk here, everything you've seen in the old TV westerns and movies needs to go out the window. We're not going to be trying to quick draw and come to a hip firing position and get off a quick shot before the bad guy manages to get off a quick shot on us. If we are having to defend ourselves with a firearm in the first place, and particularly if we're reduced to using a single action revolver, we need to maximize every advantage we can because we're starting off at a disadvantageous position. Trying to quick draw and shoot from this kind of a position is only going to make it more difficult for us to place effective shots on target, and we don't want to make our situation even more difficult by employing poor tactics. So to the degree we can, if at all possible, we're going to be shooting from a modern shooting stance and employing a two-handed grip. Also, many times, especially in the Western, we see the bad guys and the good guys cocking their single action revolver with the thumb of their shooting hand. We're not going to do that. In order to make this faster, we're going to cock the revolver with the thumb of our non-shooting hand. That's much more efficient, much quicker to get the revolver into action than to try to bring this back, thumb cock it with your shooting hand, and then get off a shot. So modern shooting stance, two-handed grip, and we're going to be cocking the revolver with the thumb of our non-shooting hand. Now, as I said earlier, we're not going to be quick drawing to defend ourselves. If an imminent threat presents itself, as quickly as possible, we want to have the firearm in our hand. And I'm going to take a few steps back here so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Again, if I have to defend myself, my hands are coming together in a good two-handed shooting grip. As you can see right here, I have a good shooting grip with my shooting hand. My non-shooting hand is wrapping around my shooting hand. My thumbs are locking, and my non-shooting trigger finger is coming underneath the trigger guard. We want to support this revolver as best we can. We're pushing forward a little bit with the shooting hand and pulling back just a little bit with the non-shooting hand to try to stabilize that revolver. As the revolver comes up on target, again, we're cocking with the thumb of our non-shooting hand as we're acquiring the sights and then squeezing off a good shot. Now, one thing that's positive about the single action revolver is it does have most of them anyway, a short, light, single action trigger pull. So in that regard, if we have a less than perfect trigger pull, there's less time and less trigger movement for the sights to misalign than with a modern double action revolver or some modern semi-automatic pistols. So that is one positive aspect of these. So if you come up on target, you get the sights and you squeeze off that shot, hopefully you're going to be able to place that shot accurately on your intended target. So if we find ourselves in a circumstance where we have to resort to our single action revolver to defend ourselves, is it realistic to expect that we can do so with any type of proficiency? Well, let's find out. I'm going to start out shooting on my half-size IPSC silhouette back here, so keep in mind this is a reduced size target, and I'm going to start out with the shot timer, and on the signal to fire I'm just going to come up and see how fast I can put one shot on target, and we'll see if that looks like it would be an effective shot. Just over 1 second, 1.03 seconds from the signal to fire until I have a shot on target. Let's take a look and see if we think that would be an effective shot. Well, I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't want to be shot there. Looks like it would hit right about here, right at the bottom of the right lung. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's a shot in just barely over 1 second that would be an effective shot on target with our single action revolver. Now, many of you know that it's pretty common these days in defensive shooting to put multiple shots on target to try to maximize our effectiveness. Typically that's called a double tap or a triple tap, depending on whether the shooter fires 2 or 3 shots. Let's see what the time looks like to fire a double tap with our single action revolver. And that was 2.38 seconds for those 2 shots. That's coming up on target, firing those shots, and obviously cocking the action between each shot. Folks, our double tap was pretty much dead center in the target here. Again, this is a half-size IPSC silhouette, and those are right where you would want those shots to be. Again, the time was 2.38 seconds. And I don't think I mentioned it before, but I'm firing these shots from a distance of 20 feet. And this is with full power 44 special ammunition out of my Ruger Bisley Blackhawk. And I've got 3 shots left in the revolver, so let's try a triple tap and see what that looks like. That was 2.57 seconds. Let's take a look at the target. And I rushed my shots a little bit that time, and it shows. The first shot is pretty good. That would have been probably just below the heart on an actual bad guy. Then I've got 2 over here to the right. Now they would have been up in this area, so still not really bad shots. They're not as bad as they look on this half-size silhouette. They're just not as good as the last few shots that I fired. All right, folks, what about a situation where we have to get off a fast, precise shot with our single action revolver? For this scenario, I'm going to use my hostage taker swinger with my IPSC silhouette, and on the signal to fire, I'm going to see how fast I can come up and get a shot on the hostage taker and hopefully save the hostage and extricate both of us from this situation. Got the hostage taker, but it didn't swing all the way around. By the way, that was 1.35 seconds. 1.35 seconds from the signal to fire until I hit the hostage taker. Next up, let's take a look at a situation where we're dealing with multiple bad guys. Now, there are a couple of tactical considerations I want to talk about with regard to multiple threats. First off, this is a circumstance where you might want to move a lot. If you can keep moving and always keep one bad guy between yourself and the other bad guys, at least you're only dealing with one threat at a time. And if you can defeat that one threat quickly, it might provide the avenue for you to escape, as I talked about earlier in the video. Also, Since the single action revolver is slower to cock and fire than a comparable double action revolver or semi-automatic pistol, this is a situation where, since we are dealing with multiple bad guys, we're going to want to get shots on target as quickly as possible. So I don't think I'm going to put 2 or 3 shots on one target and then go to the other. I'm going to come up and as fast as I can put one shot on each target. Then I'm going to assess whether or not I need to keep shooting at all, or if the threat has ended, or, as I said, if I can now escape. .29 seconds to put one shot on each of those bad guys. Let's take a look at the targets. A quick comment about my shot placement, folks. I was aiming at the numeral 9 for both of those shots. Reason being, I think this is a little bit better point of aim than the X down here in the middle of the target. So this was my point of aim. My first shot was just off to the left, should be a good effective center chest hit. And this one is almost the same exact place. Again, just slightly off to the left, a little bit lower. Both of those should be good effective chest shots, fired in that time, as I said, of 2.29 seconds. The last scenario I'm going to look at is an extremely close range situation where we have a threat that's almost on top of us. This time, on the signal to fire, I'm going to thumb cock with my shooting hand. I know that's not what I said not to do at the beginning, but we're doing it this time out of necessity because the threat is so close, and it's going to take that extra fraction of a second to get our non-shooting hand over to the revolver and cock it. So I'm going to come up and fire the first shot, cocking with my shooting hand and firing the shot. Then I'm going to start to back away from the target. As I'm backing away, I'm going to be cocking with my non-shooting hand, and I'll put another 2 or 3 shots on the target, and we'll see what this looks like. And I can't speak for any of you, but I wouldn't want to take a shot in any of those places, even this one up here in the top of the lung. So I think for our close range scenario, we were still able to adequately defend ourselves. By the way, folks, those 4 shots in our close range scenario were fired off in a time of 3.48 seconds. So not too bad for our single action wheel gun. There's really little doubt that modern day revolvers and semi-automatic pistols are superior to the single action designs of yesteryear in terms of being defensive implements. Even so, I think as we've seen here today, if you're pressed into a situation where you have to use a single action revolver to defend yourself, it can still do the job. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember, warbirdbunker.com is making t-shirts for the channel. If you go to warbirdbunker.com, you can see my t-shirt there, as well as the other designs that Nathan has, and he'll be happy to help you out if you want any of those t-shirts. So until next time, folks, single action or otherwise, good shooting. Bye-bye.